Samantha Walsh stared at the tiny camera nestled among her collection of vintage books, its lens aimed directly at the king-sized bed she'd shared with her husband for 8 years. Her hands trembled as she activated the motion detector, bile rising in her throat at what she'd been reduced to, spying on her own marriage. "You're paranoid," Daniel had insisted just last night, his cologne unfamiliar and his shirt bearing the faint smear of lipstick he claimed was tomato sauce. "There's nothing going on." For months, she'd wanted desperately to believe him, the late meetings, the weekend emergencies, the increasingly distant intimacy. But tonight, as her family gathered downstairs for their annual holiday dinner, Samantha was done with believing lies. The camera would capture the truth she already felt in her bones, and when it did, she wouldn't be confronting Daniel in private whispers and tearful pleas. This time, everyone would see exactly who her husband really was. Samantha checked the camera one last time, ensuring the small device was properly hidden between her well-worn copies of Jane Austen novels. She'd selected this specific model for its inconspicuous size and excellent low-light capabilities, a purchase she never imagined making when she'd walked down the aisle with Daniel 8 years ago. The sound of laughter drifted up from the first floor, where her parents, siblings, in-laws, and Daniel were enjoying pre-dinner cocktails. The Walsh-Miller holiday gathering was a tradition going back years, rotating between family members' homes. This year was Samantha and Daniel's turn to host, and Samantha had spent the past week cooking, cleaning, and decorating their suburban Chicago home to perfection, all while harboring the sickening suspicion that her marriage was a facade. Taking a deep breath to compose herself, Samantha smoothed down her red cashmere sweater and headed downstairs to rejoin the festivities. As she descended the staircase, she caught sight of Daniel in the living room, champagne flute in hand, regaling her brother Mike with some work anecdote. Handsome as ever in his tailored navy sweater, he looked every bit the successful marketing executive and devoted husband. "There she is," her mother called out. "We were beginning to think you'd abandoned us." "Just finishing up a few things upstairs," Samantha replied, forcing a smile as she accepted the glass of wine Daniel handed her. "My wife, always the perfectionist," Daniel said, sliding an arm around her waist and pressing a kiss to her temple. The casual affection felt like a knife twist, so convincing to everyone else, so hollow to her. "Dinner's almost ready," Samantha announced. "Should we move to the dining room?" The meal progressed with the warmth and chaos typical of family gatherings, her father's politically charged commentary, her sister-in-law's updates on the children's achievements, Daniel's mother asking for the 100th time when they might expect grandchildren. Through it all, Samantha maintained her hostess smile while her mind repeatedly drifted to the camera upstairs. Had she become that woman? The suspicious, untrusting wife who resorted to surveillance? She'd always prided herself on being rational, level-headed, the elementary school principal who could defuse any situation with calm reasoning. But months of Daniel's increasingly transparent lies had chipped away at her certainty. It had started in the spring, with Daniel suddenly networking several evenings a week, the late-night texts he'd jumped to answer, the weekend emergencies that called him to the office, the subtle distancing in their intimate life. Each instance on its own could be explained away, but together they formed a pattern Samantha couldn't ignore. "Sam? Earth to Samantha?" Her sister Katie's voice pulled her from her thoughts. "Sorry, what? I asked if you booked that vacation you were talking about, the Bahamas trip?" "Oh." Samantha glanced briefly at Daniel, who was suddenly very interested in his mashed potatoes. "We're still figuring out the dates with Daniel's work schedule." The trip, a second honeymoon of sorts, had been Daniel's suggestion 3 months ago, presumably during a bout of guilt. Since then, he'd found endless reasons to postpone booking it. "You should just pick a date and make him commit," Katie said with a laugh. "These workaholic husbands need firm deadlines." Speaking of work, Daniel smoothly interjected, "Mike, how's that new client of yours working out? The tech startup?" The conversation shifted, and Samantha allowed herself to retreat into observation mode, watching Daniel charm her family with practiced ease. He'd always been good at that, making people feel special, heard, valued. It was what had drawn her to him when they'd met at a friend's wedding 9 years ago. After dessert, as the family dispersed throughout the house with their coffee and digestifs, Samantha's phone vibrated with a notification. The motion sensor on the bedroom camera had been activated. Her heart raced as she excused herself to the kitchen under the pretense of starting the dishes. With trembling hands, she opened the app and watched the live feed. Daniel had entered their bedroom and was taking a phone call, his back to the camera as he spoke in hushed tones. "I can't talk long," she heard him say. "Yes, I miss you too." "No, not tonight, it's the family thing, remember?" Tomorrow, I promise. I'll make up some work excuse. Samantha felt the room spin as her worst fears were confirmed in real time. She gripped the edge of the kitchen island, trying to breathe through the crushing sensation in her chest. Need some help? Her sister's voice made her jump and nearly drop the phone. Katie. God, you startled me. Katie's eyes narrowed with concern. Are you okay? You look like you've seen a ghost. Just tired, Samantha lied, quickly locking her phone. The holidays, you know? Katie wasn't buying it. Sam, something's going on. You've been off all evening. For a moment, Samantha considered confiding in her sister, sharing the burden of what she'd just witnessed. But the thought of saying it out loud, making it real, was too much to bear tonight. Really, I'm fine. Just stressed about work and hosting. Before Katie could press further, Daniel appeared in the kitchen doorway. There you are, he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes. Your dad is insisting we play charades. Apparently, your parents are challenging us to a rematch after last year's defeat. Sounds fun, Samantha replied, wondering how she would get through the next few hours pretending her world hadn't just imploded. Somehow, she managed. She laughed at her father's terrible acting, cheered when her mother correctly guessed Gone with the Wind, and even maintained physical contact with Daniel when their team huddles required it. All the while, her mind was cataloging details, the name of the divorce attorney one of her colleagues had used, whether the prenup they'd signed had infidelity clauses, which of their friends would stand by her. By the time the last family member departed just after midnight, Samantha was exhausted from the performance. She mechanically moved through the kitchen, loading the dishwasher while Daniel saw his parents to their car. When he returned, he loosened his collar with a sigh. Well, that was a success, I'd say. Your mom seemed pleased with everything. Samantha responded noncommittally, wiping down the counter with unnecessary vigor. I'm beat, Daniel continued. Going to head up to bed. You coming? The audacity of his casual demeanor made something snap inside her. Who were you talking to in our bedroom earlier? Daniel froze momentarily before his features rearranged into practiced confusion. What? When? During dessert. You took a call upstairs. Oh, that was just Jim from work. The Spencer account had some issues with the holiday campaign. The lie rolled off his tongue so easily, so convincingly, that for a split second Samantha almost doubted what she'd heard with her own ears. Jim, she repeated. On a Saturday night, during the holidays. It's a major account, Sam. You know how it is. He approached, attempting to wrap his arms around her. Let's not do this tonight, okay? It was a great evening. Let's end it on a high note. Samantha stepped out of his reach. You promised someone you'd see them tomorrow. You said you'd make up a work excuse. Daniel's expression hardened. You were spying on me? Jesus, Samantha. Was I wrong to? She challenged. Yes. Normal people don't eavesdrop on their spouses' private conversations. Normal people don't lie to their spouses about who they're talking to. Daniel ran a hand through his hair in frustration. This is exactly why I took the call upstairs. You've been interrogating me for months, turning everything into some kind of evidence in your paranoid investigation. Paranoid? Samantha's voice rose. You come home with lipstick on your clothes, you're constantly texting at all hours, you've been inventing work emergencies every other weekend. This again? Daniel threw up his hands. I told you, that was sauce on my shirt. And yes, my job has been demanding lately. I'm sorry that my career success doesn't fit into your perfect little schedule. The gaslighting was so blatant that Samantha almost laughed. Do you actually believe your own lies at this point? I'm not doing this, Daniel said, turning toward the stairs. You're clearly worked up and determined to pick a fight. We can talk when you've calmed down and are ready to be rational. As he walked away, Samantha called after him, her name isn't Jim, is it? Daniel paused on the stairs but didn't turn around. You're overreacting, Samantha. There's nothing going on. Get some sleep. Alone in the kitchen, Samantha felt a strange calm settle over her. In all their arguments about his suspicious behavior, this was the first time she had concrete evidence. No more doubting herself, no more accepting his flimsy explanations. She knew the truth now. She finished cleaning the kitchen, her mind surprisingly clear as she formulated a plan. Daniel would be expecting tears, recriminations, perhaps a late-night confrontation in their bedroom, but Samantha was done with private pain. If Daniel wanted to humiliate her with his infidelity, he would face the consequences publicly. The Walshmiller post-holiday brunch was scheduled for tomorrow at her parents' house. Everyone would be there, both their families together one last time before the new year. It would be the perfect opportunity. Upstairs, she found Daniel already in bed, pretending to be asleep. She gathered her pajamas and toiletries and headed to the guest room without a word. If he noticed or cared, he gave no indication. In the guest bathroom, Samantha finally allowed herself a moment of grief. She sat on the edge of the tub and let silent tears fall, mourning not just her marriage but the future she'd planned, the children they'd talked about having, the growing old together that now seemed like a cruel joke. But as she prepared for bed, grief gave way to resolve. She wasn't some helpless victim. She was Samantha Walsh, who had worked her way up from teacher to principal by age 32, who had survived her father's cancer scare and her best friend's death, who had rebuilt her life before and could do it again. She set her alarm for early morning, determined to be the first one up. She needed to retrieve the camera footage and prepare it for tomorrow. Sleep came surprisingly easily, perhaps because for the first time in months, uncertainty had been replaced with clarity. When her alarm sounded at 6 a.m., Samantha felt rested and focused. She slipped quietly past the master bedroom, where Daniel still slept, and retrieved the camera from its hiding place. At her desk in the home office, she downloaded the video file from the previous evening. Fast-forwarding to the call, she watched again as Daniel spoke to his lover, making plans while standing in the bedroom he shared with his wife. She trimmed the video to include just the damning conversation, then transferred it to a thumb drive. When she heard Daniel stirring upstairs, she quickly tucked the drive into her purse and began preparing coffee as if it were any normal Sunday morning. "You didn't come to bed," Daniel said when he appeared in the kitchen, his tone somewhere between accusation and concern. "Didn't want to disturb you," she replied evenly, sliding a mug of coffee across the counter to him. "You seem tired." Daniel studied her face, clearly trying to gauge her mood. Whatever he saw, or thought he saw, seemed to reassure him. "About last night," he began. "I think we both said things in the heat of the moment." "It's fine," Samantha interrupted. "Let's just get through today's brunch, okay?" Relief washed over his features. "Of course. I'll go shower." As he turned to leave, Samantha added, "Oh, your mother texted. She forgot her reading glasses here last night. I told her we'd bring them today." "Perfect. Thanks for handling that." Once alone, Samantha allowed herself a grim smile. Daniel thought he'd dodged another confrontation, that she'd retreat into denial rather than face the ugly truth. He had no idea what was coming. They drove to her parents' house in relative silence, the kind that had become increasingly common over the past months. Daniel made a few attempts at conversation, comments about the weather, a question about one of her staff members, but Samantha responded with minimal engagement. "Are you still upset about last night?" he finally asked as they neared their destination. "No," she answered truthfully. "I'm not upset anymore." The Walsh-Miller post-holiday brunch was a more intimate affair than the previous evening's dinner, with just immediate family gathered around her parents' large dining room table. Samantha's mother had outdone herself with a spread of quiches, pastries, fresh fruit, and her famous cinnamon rolls. As they took their seats, Samantha noticed her sister watching her with concern. Katie had always been perceptive, and Samantha knew her behavior at dinner hadn't completely fooled her. She gave Katie a small smile that she hoped conveyed, "I'm handling it." Conversation flowed easily among the family members, with Daniel once again turning on the charm, complimenting her mother's cooking and engaging her father in a discussion about the latest Bears game. To an outside observer, they would look like the perfect couple, successful, attractive, comfortable with each other's families. As brunch wound down and people began to linger over coffee, Samantha caught her father's eye and nodded slightly. Earlier that morning, she'd texted him asking if the large TV in the living room was still connected to an HDMI port. When he'd confirmed it was, she'd simply asked him to trust her. Before everyone disperses, her father announced, "I believe Samantha has something she'd like to share with us." All eyes turned to her. Daniel looked confused but not alarmed, perhaps assuming she was about to announce a promotion or a trip. Samantha rose from her seat, her heart pounding but her voice steady. "Yes, I do. If everyone could move to the living room, please." As the family relocated, murmuring curiously among themselves, Samantha retrieved the thumb drive from her purse. Daniel caught up to her in the hallway. "What's going on?" he asked, a hint of nervousness creeping into his tone. "You'll see," she replied, brushing past him to connect the drive to the TV. Once everyone was settled, her parents on their love seat, Katie and Mike with their spouses on the couch, Daniel's parents in the armchairs, Samantha stood before them all, thumb drive remote in hand. "I've been struggling with something for months now," she began, her voice clear despite the emotion threatening to overwhelm her. "Daniel has been distant, working late, going to the office on weekends, constantly on his phone." Daniel shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Sam, is this really appropriate right now?" She ignored him. Whenever I've questioned him, he's told me I was overreacting, paranoid, imagining things. She paused, looking directly at her husband. Last night, during our family dinner, I finally got proof that I wasn't. Without further explanation, she pressed play. The bedroom appeared on screen, and then Daniel, pacing with his phone. I can't talk long, his recorded voice rang out clearly. Yes, I miss you too. No, not tonight, it's the family thing, remember? Tomorrow, I promise. I'll make up some work excuse. The room fell silent except for the audio from the TV. Samantha watched her mother-in-law's hand fly to her mouth, her own mother's eyes widen in shock, her father's jaw clench in anger. But mostly, she watched Daniel, whose face had drained of all color. When the short clip ended, Samantha spoke again. You said I was overreacting, Daniel. Was I? Daniel stood abruptly. You recorded me? In our bedroom? That's invasion of privacy. Whose privacy? Samantha challenged. Yours and your girlfriend's? This is completely inappropriate, Daniel hissed, looking around at their stunned family members. We should discuss this privately. Like you've been privately cheating on me for months. Samantha's voice remained steady. No more privacy, Daniel. No more lies. No more making me feel crazy for suspecting the truth. Daniel's father cleared his throat awkwardly. Perhaps we should give you two some space. No, Samantha said firmly. I didn't show this to embarrass anyone. I showed it because I'm done with secrets and lies. Daniel has been gaslighting me for months, making me doubt myself, acting like I was being irrational. Samantha, Daniel's voice took on a pleading tone. Please, can we just… Who is she? Katie interrupted, her expression fierce with protective anger. Daniel's eyes darted around the room, clearly calculating his options. Finally, his shoulders slumped in defeat. Her name is Adrienne, he admitted quietly. She works in the creative department at the agency. How long? Samantha demanded, though she suspected she already knew. Daniel hesitated. Since the Carlisle account. About 7 months. 7 months. More than half a year of lies, of making her feel paranoid, of diminishing her concerns. Samantha felt oddly calm now that the truth was finally in the open. I want a divorce, she stated simply. Daniel's head snapped up. Sam, no. We can work through this. It was a mistake. A 7-month mistake? Her brother Mike interjected incredulously. Stay out of this, Daniel snapped before turning back to Samantha. Baby, please. I'll end it with her today. We can go to counseling, take that trip we talked about. The trip you've been postponing for months? Samantha shook her head. It's over, Daniel. I deserve better than this. Her mother stood up, coming to Samantha's side and placing a supportive arm around her shoulders. I think you should leave, Daniel. This is between me and my wife, he protested. You made it everyone's business when you betrayed her, Samantha's father said, rising from his seat. I think it's best if you go now. Daniel looked desperately at his own parents, but they remained silent, his mother's expression one of profound disappointment, his father avoiding eye contact entirely. Fine, Daniel finally said, grabbing his coat. But this isn't over, Samantha. We need to talk when you've calmed down. I am calm, she replied. And yes, we'll talk, through our lawyers. After Daniel stormed out, the room remained silent for several long moments. Then Katie approached and wrapped Samantha in a fierce hug. I'm so proud of you, she whispered. And I'm so sorry you're going through this. One by one, family members expressed their support, her father's vow to help with legal costs if needed, her mother-in-law's tearful apology for her son's behavior, her brother-in-law's offer to help her move if she needed. Only when the initial shock had worn off and conversations had shifted to practical matters did Samantha excuse herself to the bathroom. There, alone for the first time since her public revelation, she finally allowed herself to feel the full weight of what had just happened, and what was yet to come. Divorce. Starting over at 36. Facing friends and colleagues with the knowledge that her marriage had failed. It was daunting, terrifying even. But as she stared at her reflection in the mirror, Samantha recognized something in her eyes that had been missing for months: certainty. She had trusted her instincts, confronted the truth, and refused to be gaslighted any longer. Whatever came next would be difficult, but it would be real, and it would be on her terms. When she rejoined her family in the living room, her sister was already talking about calling a real estate agent friend who could help Samantha find a new place. Her brother was suggesting a good divorce attorney. Her parents were discussing having her move back home temporarily if needed. Surrounded by their love and support, Samantha realized that while her marriage was ending, she was not alone. She had been strong enough to expose the truth, and she would be strong enough to rebuild her life, a better life, without lies and betrayal at its foundation. That night, after returning to an empty house, Daniel had texted that he was staying at a hotel. To give her space, Samantha retrieved the camera from its hiding place among her books. The small device that had confirmed her worst fears and changed the course of her life now seemed so innocuous. She considered destroying it, erasing any reminder of how far things had deteriorated that she'd felt compelled to spy on her own husband. Instead, she placed it in a drawer in her home office. A reminder not of Daniel's betrayal, but of her own resilience, her refusal to accept gaslighting and lies, her courage in confronting the truth no matter how painful. Tomorrow would bring challenges, consulting attorneys, perhaps house hunting, eventually dividing 8 years of shared life into his and hers. But tonight, alone in the guest room that would be her bedroom until more permanent arrangements could be made, Samantha felt the first tentative stirrings of freedom. No more lying awake wondering where her husband really was. No more doubting her own perceptions. No more pretending everything was fine when it wasn't. As she drifted toward sleep, Samantha's last thought was that sometimes, the most painful endings were necessary for better beginnings. And somewhere on the other side of this heartbreak was a version of herself she had yet to meet, stronger, wiser, and unwilling to settle for anything less than the truth. The divorce proceedings began with a whirlwind of paperwork and meetings. Samantha sat across from her attorney, Eliza Goldstein, a sharp-eyed woman in her 50s whose reputation for handling high-conflict divorces had made her the top recommendation from several friends. The law office, with its polished mahogany and muted gray walls, felt appropriately somber for dismantling a marriage. "So he's contesting the prenup?" Samantha asked, reviewing the latest communication from Daniel's lawyer. Attempting to, Eliza clarified, her reading glasses perched on the end of her nose as she examined the documents. "His attorney is arguing that the infidelity clause shouldn't apply because there was no physical relationship with this Adrian woman." Samantha let out a bitter laugh. 7 months of lying about his whereabouts, and he expects me to believe they were just friends? "It's a standard tactic," Eliza said, unruffled. "They're testing to see if you have concrete evidence beyond the phone call. Which, I should note, could potentially be problematic in court due to Illinois' two-party consent laws for recordings." "I wasn't trying to build a legal case," Samantha sighed. "I just needed to know I wasn't crazy." "And now you do," Eliza affirmed. "But moving forward, let's focus on what we can prove through legitimate channels. Credit card statements, phone records, hotel receipts, those are fair game." As they continued discussing strategy, Samantha's phone buzzed with a text from Katie, ran into Daniel at Whole Foods. "He looked rough. Asked about you." Samantha didn't respond. In the months since the brunch confrontation, Daniel had cycled through various approaches, angry texts accusing her of humiliating him, tearful voicemails begging for another chance, and most recently, attempts to enlist mutual friends as mediators. She had maintained her boundary of communicating only through attorneys, a stance that clearly frustrated him. "One more thing," Eliza said as their meeting concluded. "The house. Are you sure you want to sell rather than buy out Daniel's share?" Samantha nodded firmly. "Too many memories. I need a fresh start." The colonial-style house she and Daniel had purchased 5 years ago, once her dream home, now felt tainted. Each room contained echoes of their life together, holidays, dinner parties, lazy Sunday mornings, all now cast in the shadow of his betrayal. She couldn't imagine building her new life in a space so haunted by the old one. "Understood. I'll make that clear in our counterproposal." Eliza closed her folder. "And Samantha? You're doing well. Many clients in your position struggle to make these practical decisions so clearly." "I had months of practice suspecting the worst while hoping I was wrong," Samantha replied. "Now that I know the truth, the decisions are actually easier." Outside the law office, the April sunshine felt incongruously cheerful. Chicago had emerged from winter's grip, with tulips pushing through the soil and trees budding with tentative green. Renewal and rebirth everywhere, an apt metaphor for her own life, Samantha supposed, even if the process was painful. She decided to walk for a while, enjoying the mild weather before heading to her temporary home, her parents' guest house in Lake Forest. The arrangement, initially meant to last just a few weeks, had stretched into a month as she navigated the early stages of divorce and house preparations. Her parents had been unfailingly supportive, respecting her privacy while ensuring she wasn't alone unless she wanted to be. As Samantha walked along Michigan Avenue, her phone rang, an unknown number. She almost declined it, wary of another of Daniel's tactics, but answered on impulse. "Hello? Is this Samantha Walsh?" A woman's voice, unfamiliar. Yes, who's calling? My name is Adrian Carlisle. I think we should talk. Samantha stopped walking abruptly, causing a businessman behind her to swerve with an annoyed grunt. Adrian. Daniels, what? Girlfriend? Mistress? The woman who had helped destroy her marriage was now casually calling her on a Tuesday afternoon. I have nothing to say to you, Samantha managed, her voice tight. I understand, Adrian replied. But I have things to say to you. Important things. Things you should know before your divorce proceeds. Curiosity warred with self-preservation. What could this woman possibly tell her that would matter now? How did you get my number? Daniel's phone. He doesn't know I'm calling. There was a pause. Please, just coffee. 30 minutes of your time. Against her better judgment, Samantha agreed to meet at a cafe downtown, neutral territory far from her usual haunts. As she continued walking, now with a destination in mind, she texted Katie, meeting Adrian for coffee. If you don't hear from me in an hour, assume I'm in jail for assault. Katie's response was immediate. What? Why are you meeting her? Do you want me to come? No, I need to do this alone. But thanks. The cafe was moderately busy with the afternoon crowd when Samantha arrived. She spotted Adrian immediately at a corner table, younger than she'd expected, perhaps early 30s, with a sleek bob and the polished look of someone in a creative field. She was pretty in a conventional way, though not the bombshell Samantha had imagined during her darkest moments of comparison. Thank you for coming, Adrian said as Samantha approached, standing slightly as if unsure about the proper etiquette for meeting your lover's wife. I ordered you a latte, but I can get something else if. It's fine, Samantha cut her off, sitting down. You said you had something important to tell me. I'm listening. Adrian looked nervous, fiddling with her napkin. First, I want to say I'm sorry. I know that doesn't begin to cover it, but I am truly sorry for the pain I've caused you. Did you know he was married? Samantha asked bluntly. Yes, Adrian admitted. He said it was essentially over, that you were separated in all but name, living separate lives. The classic line, Samantha remarked dryly. And you believed him? At first. But over time, things didn't add up. The constant rescheduling, the secretive calls, never being able to contact him on weekends. Adrian took a deep breath. About 2 months ago, I started to suspect he was lying about the state of your marriage. So I followed him to your house. Samantha felt a chill. You were watching our house? Just once. I saw you two leaving together, looking like any normal couple. When I confronted him, he admitted you weren't separated, but insisted the marriage was loveless, a facade maintained for family and careers. And you continued the relationship anyway, Samantha stated, not a question. I'm not proud of it, Adrian acknowledged. But that's not why I asked to meet you. There's something else you should know. She reached into her bag and pulled out a manila envelope. Daniel wasn't just lying to you. He was lying to me too. Adrian slid the envelope across the table. Warily, Samantha opened it to find printouts of text messages and what appeared to be dating app conversations, all featuring Daniel. He was seeing at least 2 other women besides me, Adrian explained quietly. One from his gym, another he met through a dating app, possibly more that I haven't uncovered. Samantha felt the blood drain from her face as she scanned the messages, many explicitly sexual, all clearly recent. The dates aligned with times Daniel had claimed to be with Adrian, meaning he'd been using one affair to cover for others. Why are you showing me this? Samantha asked, her voice hollow. Because you deserve to know the full truth. And because it might help your legal case. Adrian's expression hardened slightly. He used both of us, Samantha. He's a pathological liar who gets off on juggling multiple women, creating elaborate deceptions, watching us all believe his stories. Samantha stared at the evidence, feeling a strange sense of validation mixed with fresh hurt. She'd suspected the worst, but the reality was even more sordid than she'd imagined. I should have realized sooner, Adrian continued. The way he'd create drama in our relationship whenever I got too close, the inconsistent stories, the vague explanations. Classic patterns of a serial cheater. Why didn't you just break up with him when you found out? Samantha asked, genuinely curious. Adrian looked down. I thought I loved him. And he's very, very good at making you believe you're the problem, that your insecurities are making you see things that aren't there. The familiar dynamic sent a chill through Samantha. How many times had Daniel made her feel irrational for questioning his late nights? How often had he turned her legitimate concerns back on her as trust issues? There's something else, Adrian said hesitantly. Something that might be relevant to your financial considerations in the divorce. Samantha raised an eyebrow, waiting. Daniel's been siphoning money from his marketing agency's client accounts. Small amounts, disguised as vendor payments to shell companies he controls. I discovered it accidentally when helping with some creative billing for the Westfield campaign. You're saying he's embezzling? Samantha asked, stunned. Daniel had always been ambitious, sometimes cutting ethical corners in his marketing strategies, but outright theft hadn't seemed in his character. Yes. I don't know how much in total, but it's been going on for at least a year. He's been using some of it to fund our time together. Expensive hotels, gifts, a weekend in New York. The implications raced through Samantha's mind. If true, this information could impact not just their divorce settlement, but Daniel's entire career and possibly his freedom. I need to think about this, Samantha said, gathering the documents back into the envelope. Why are you really doing this, Adrian? Revenge because he was seeing other women? Partly, Adrian admitted. But also because I've spent months being manipulated and gaslit, just like you have. At some point, you have to stop being a victim and take back control. Samantha studied the younger woman, recognizing a familiar determination in her eyes. I appreciate the information. But this doesn't make us friends. I know. I wouldn't expect that. Adrian stood to leave. My contact information is in the envelope if you have questions. I'm willing to provide a formal statement for your divorce proceedings if needed. After Adrian left, Samantha remained at the table, processing this unexpected development. She texted Katie a brief update, still alive. Got some shocking info. Tell you later, duh. Before calling Eliza's office to request an urgent meeting for the following morning. That evening, in the quiet of her parents' guest house, Samantha spread Adrian's documents across the small dining table. The evidence painted a damning picture of Daniel's character, not just a cheater, but a serial one who took pleasure in deception itself. The financial allegations were even more concerning, suggesting a level of moral bankruptcy Samantha hadn't wanted to believe possible. Her phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. We need to talk. In person. Please, Sam. After a moment's consideration, she replied, everything through the lawyers. This is about us, not legal matters. Just 30 minutes. For old time's sake. Samantha hesitated. With what she now knew, perhaps confronting Daniel directly would be productive. She could gauge his reaction to Adrian's allegations, possibly gather more evidence for the divorce proceedings. Fine. Coffee tomorrow, 4 p.m. Intelligentsia on Randolph, 30 minutes only. His response came immediately, thank you. See you then. She didn't sleep well that night, her dreams filled with fragments of her marriage seen through this new, tainted lens. Had there been signs of Daniel's multiple infidelities from the beginning? Had she been naive to believe it started with Adrian? Every memory now required re-examination, every anniversary, every business trip, every late night at the office. Morning brought a meeting with Eliza, who reviewed Adrian's documents with professional detachment. This changes our approach, she confirmed. Serial infidelity with multiple partners strengthens our position regarding the prenup's morality clause. The financial improprieties are more complicated, potentially very useful, but also risky if we can't substantiate them. Adrian is willing to provide a formal statement, Samantha offered. The mistress's testimony is inherently problematic, Eliza cautioned, but as leverage in settlement negotiations, this is gold. Daniel's primary concern will be preventing any hint of financial misconduct from reaching his agency partners or clients. So we use it to push for a more favorable settlement? Precisely. If he wants this handled quietly, he'll need to be generous. Eliza removed her reading glasses. Are you prepared for how ugly this might get if he realizes what we know? Samantha thought about the months of gaslighting, the elaborate lies, the way Daniel had made her question her own sanity. I'm done being afraid of his reactions, she said firmly. He lost the right to my consideration when he decided to live a double, no, triple life behind my back. The coffee shop was busy when Samantha arrived precisely at 4 p.m. Daniel was already there, occupying a small table near the windows, 2 cups before him. He stood when he saw her, his expression an attempt at contrition that didn't quite reach his eyes. Sam, he said, moving as if to embrace her before thinking better of it. Thank you for coming. I got you a latte. Thanks, she replied coolly, sitting across from him. You said you wanted to talk. Daniel leaned forward, his voice low and earnest. I've been doing a lot of thinking since everything happened. I made a terrible mistake, the worst mistake of my life. I hurt the one person I truly love, and I'll regret it forever. Samantha took a sip of her latte, maintaining eye contact but offering no response. I've ended things with Adrian completely, he continued. I'm in therapy, working on understanding why I did what I did. It was never about you, Sam. It was my own insecurities, my own issues. Which Adrian? The one from your agency, or the one from your gym? Or perhaps the one from Tinder? Samantha asked mildly, watching his face. Daniel's expression froze momentarily before he recovered. What are you talking about? There was only Adrian from work. That's interesting, because Adrian from work showed me quite a collection of your conversations with other women. Samantha set down her cup precisely. You might want to be more careful about leaving your phone unattended around one mistress when you're texting others. Daniel paled visibly. She's lying. Trying to cause problems because I broke things off. Stop, Samantha cut him off. Just stop. I have the receipts, Daniel. Literally, receipts from hotels, screenshots of explicit messages, dating profiles. All with timestamps that match times you claimed to be with Adrian. His jaw worked as he processed this development. Sam, it's not what you think. It never is with you, is it? She interrupted again. It wasn't what I thought when I found lipstick on your shirt. It wasn't what I thought when you were constantly working late. It wasn't what I thought when I heard you making plans with your girlfriend in our bedroom. She leaned forward. But here's the thing, Daniel, it was exactly what I thought. Every time. I just didn't have proof until now. He ran a hand through his hair, visibly recalculating his approach. Okay, yes, there were some indiscretions. I'm not proud of it, but that doesn't erase 8 years of marriage, of building a life together. We can get past this, go to counseling. There's something else, Samantha said, her voice deadly calm. Something about creative billing for the Westfield campaign. Shell companies receiving vendor payments. Ring any bells? The color drained completely from Daniel's face. She told you about that? So it's true, Samantha said, not really a question. You've been stealing from your clients. It's not stealing, he hissed, leaning closer. It's standard practice in the industry. Markup on vendor services. To shell companies you personally control? I don't think the partners at your agency would agree that's standard practice, let alone the clients whose money you're taking. Daniel's expression hardened, the facade of the repentant husband disappearing entirely. What exactly are you planning to do with this information, Samantha? That depends on you, she replied. My attorney will be contacting yours with revised settlement terms. I suggest you agree to them quickly and without argument. You're blackmailing me, he stated flatly. I'm leveraging information relevant to our divorce negotiations, Samantha corrected. Information you deliberately concealed from me during our marriage while spending joint assets on your multiple affairs. Daniel stared at her with a mixture of anger and something that might have been respect. I underestimated you. Yes, Samantha agreed, standing to leave. You did. Multiple times. That was your mistake. As she gathered her purse, Daniel reached for her wrist. Sam, wait. We can work something out between us, without lawyers. There's no need to bring the financial matters into this. Samantha looked pointedly at his hand until he released her. Everything through the lawyers, Daniel. Exactly as I've been saying all along. She left him sitting there, staring after her with an expression she couldn't quite decipher. For the first time since discovering his betrayal, Samantha felt completely in control, not just of the divorce proceedings, but of her own narrative. The revised settlement terms, delivered to Daniel's attorney the following day, were aggressive but not unreasonable. Samantha would receive 60% of the proceeds from the house sale rather than the 50% originally discussed. Daniel would be solely responsible for all tax liabilities incurred during their marriage, and most significantly, he would relinquish any claim to the retirement account they had jointly funded, which had grown substantially thanks to Samantha's careful investment strategy. In exchange, Samantha would make no formal allegations regarding financial improprieties to any third parties, including Daniel's agency or clients. The infidelity would remain a private matter between them, with no specifics disclosed in the divorce filings beyond the minimum required to invoke the prenup's morality clause. Daniel's attorney accepted the terms with minimal negotiation, confirming Samantha's suspicion that the financial leverage was even more powerful than Eliza had anticipated. Within 2 weeks, the settlement agreement was signed, and the divorce was on track to be finalized with remarkable speed by Chicago standards. We should celebrate, Katie insisted when Samantha shared the news over lunch at their favorite bistro. Not the end of your marriage, obviously, but this victory. You stood up for yourself and didn't let him manipulate you into a disadvantageous settlement. It doesn't feel like a victory, Samantha admitted. More like confirmation that the man I married never really existed. Katie reached across the table to squeeze her hand. I know. And that grief is valid. But I also see something in you that wasn't there 6 months ago, a strength, a certainty. Necessity, Samantha shrugged. When your life implodes, you either fall apart or find steel in your spine. Well, whatever it is, it looks good on you. Katie raised her water glass. To new beginnings, Samantha clinked her glass against her sister's. To truth, however painful. That evening, as Samantha packed more of her belongings from the house, now officially on the market with 3 showings scheduled for the weekend, her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "It's Adrian. Just wanted to let you know Daniel confronted me about sharing information with you. I've been fired from the agency, effective immediately." Samantha stared at the message, unsure how to respond. She hadn't particularly considered the consequences for Adrian when leveraging the information against Daniel. After a moment's consideration, she replied, "I'm sorry about your job. That wasn't my intention." "I know. It's not your fault. Actually relieved to be out of there. Already interviewing with other agencies. Just wanted you to know he's on the warpath. Thanks for the warning. Take care of yourself." Samantha set down her phone, thinking about the complex web of consequences resulting from Daniel's actions. Lives disrupted, careers impacted, trust shattered, all because one man couldn't be content with the life he'd built and the woman he'd promised to love. As if on cue, a text from Daniel appeared, "You got what you wanted. Hope it was worth it." She didn't respond. There was nothing left to say between them that wouldn't be empty words or renewed accusations. Instead, she continued packing books into boxes, separating his from hers, dismantling the shared library they'd built together over 8 years. Some titles were easy to categorize: her childhood favorites, his business books, her educational psychology texts. Others required more consideration: jointly purchased cookbooks, travel guides for trips they'd taken together, novels they'd both enjoyed. Each decision was a small exercise in detachment, in acknowledging that objects once shared would now belong solely to one person or the other. When she reached the shelf containing her vintage books, the shelf where she'd hidden the camera that had started this chain of events, Samantha paused. The camera itself had long since been put away, but the books remained, witnesses to the moment when suspicion had transformed into certainty. She ran her fingers along their spines, remembering the night she'd placed the camera among them, her heart racing with a mixture of determination and shame. How different things looked from this side of the truth. The shame was gone, replaced by a clear-eyed understanding that her instincts had been correct all along. As she carefully wrapped each book in tissue paper before placing it in a box, Samantha reflected on the months ahead. The divorce would be final soon. The house would sell, requiring a final division of furniture and household items. She had already secured a lease on a small but charming apartment in Lincoln Park, closer to her school and far from the neighborhood she'd shared with Daniel. There would be awkward encounters with mutual friends, uncomfortable explanations to extended family members who hadn't been present at the brunch revelation. There would be dates, eventually, with the accompanying baggage of trust issues and heightened vigilance for red flags. There would be moments of loneliness, of doubting her decision, of wondering if she should have tried harder to make the marriage work despite Daniel's betrayal. But beneath all that uncertainty lay a foundation of truth. She had trusted herself when everyone else, especially Daniel, had tried to convince her she was overreacting. She had sought evidence when platitudes weren't enough. And when that evidence confirmed her worst fears, she had found the courage to confront the truth publicly, refusing to be silenced or shamed. That was something to build on. Something real, unlike the marriage that had been built on Daniel's capacity for deception. As Samantha sealed the last box of books, her phone rang, her mother, checking in as she did most evenings. "How's the packing going, honey?" Elizabeth asked. "Slow but steady," Samantha replied. "Just finished the bookshelves in the study. Do you need help this weekend? Your father and I could come down." "Thanks, Mom, but I'm okay. Katie and Mike are coming Saturday to help with the living room furniture." "You sound tired," her mother observed. "Are you getting enough rest?" Samantha smiled at the familiar concern. "As much as can be expected. The settlement is signed, which is a weight off my shoulders." "And Daniel? Has he been difficult?" "Nothing I can't handle," Samantha assured her. "Actually, he's been surprisingly cooperative since our last meeting." What she didn't tell her mother was about Adrian's text, about Daniel's cryptic message, about the knot of unease that occasionally tightened in her stomach when she considered the extent of her soon-to-be ex-husband's deception. Some worries were better kept to herself, at least until she knew whether they were justified. After saying goodnight to her mother, Samantha made one final round through the house, checking that doors were locked and lights turned off. In the master bedroom, a space she'd abandoned for the guest room even before moving to her parents' guest house, she paused, looking at the king-sized bed where she'd once felt safe and loved. Had it all been a lie? Every whispered endearment, every shared dream, every moment of intimacy? Or had there been truth mixed with the deception, real connection interspersed with betrayal? She would probably never know. The Daniel she'd loved, or thought she loved, was inextricably tangled with the Daniel who'd maintained multiple affairs while gaslighting her about her suspicions. Separating one from the other was an exercise in futility. What mattered now was moving forward with eyes wide open, trusting herself even when doing so was painful. The camera hidden among her books had been a last resort, a desperate attempt to confirm what she already knew in her heart. But the real revelation hadn't been Daniel's infidelity, it had been Samantha's own strength, her unwillingness to accept lies when truth was available, however heartbreaking. As she turned off the bedroom light and closed the door, Samantha felt a curious sense of peace settle over her. The worst had happened, her marriage had ended, her trust had been violated, her future had been thrown into uncertainty. Yet here she stood, still breathing, still moving forward, still determined to build a life based on honesty rather than comfortable deceptions. Tomorrow would bring more boxes, more decisions, more steps toward her new life. But tonight, in the quiet of a house that would soon belong to someone else, Samantha allowed herself to acknowledge how far she'd come from that desperate moment of hiding a camera among her books, and how much farther she could go, now that the weight of doubt and deception had been lifted from her shoulders. 6 months after her divorce was finalized, Samantha stood in her new apartment, surveying the space she'd created entirely on her own terms. The Lincoln Park one-bedroom wasn't large, but its high ceilings, abundant natural light, and proximity to the lake more than compensated for the modest square footage. More importantly, it contained no ghosts of her life with Daniel, no memories lurking in corners, no shared furniture carrying emotional baggage. Earth to Sam, Katie's voice broke through her reverie. I asked if you want the ficus by the window or near the bookshelf? Sorry, Samantha smiled at her sister. Window, definitely. It needs the light. Katie repositioned the potted plant, stepping back to assess the effect. Perfect. This place is really coming together. It was. After living in temporary spaces, first her parents' guest house, then a furnished month-to-month rental, Samantha had finally found a place that felt like home. She'd furnished it gradually, selecting each piece with care, a comfortable sectional in a rich teal, a dining set with mid-century lines, bookshelves that showcased her beloved vintage collection. The walls featured her own photography, landscapes from travels, close-ups of architecture, abstract studies of light and shadow, professionally framed as a gift from her colleagues when she'd been promoted to district curriculum director 3 months earlier. Wine, Katie suggested, heading toward the kitchen. We should toast your official housewarming. Sounds perfect, Samantha agreed, adjusting a throw pillow on the couch. Glasses are in the cabinet above the dishwasher. As Katie poured, Samantha's phone buzzed with an email notification. She glanced at it, then quickly put the phone face down on the coffee table. Everything okay? Katie asked, noticing her sister's reaction. Fine, Samantha said automatically, then caught herself. One of her post-divorce commitments had been greater honesty, even when uncomfortable. Actually, it's from Daniel's mother. She wants to meet for coffee. Katie handed her a glass of Cabernet. Seriously? After complete radio silence since the brunch showdown? What does she want? I don't know. Her message just says she'd like to catch up, that she's been thinking about me. Are you going to go? Samantha sipped her wine thoughtfully. I'm not sure. Patricia was always kind to me. She seemed genuinely shocked by Daniel's behavior. Of course she was shocked. Her precious son turned out to be a serial cheater and possible embezzler. Katie settled onto the couch beside her sister. Though I guess it's not her fault her son is a dirtbag. No, it's not, Samantha agreed. And we always got along well. She was more of a mother to me than my mother-in-law. So you're considering it? Maybe. Samantha set her glass down. I'll think about it. No need to decide tonight. They moved on to lighter topics. Katie's new job at a marketing firm, ironically, a competitor to Daniel's agency, their brother Mike's upcoming wedding, plans for the holidays. It felt good to discuss normal life events, to exist in a present not dominated by divorce proceedings and painful revelations. After Katie left, Samantha returned to the email from her former mother-in-law. Patricia Miller had always been a straight shooter, elegant and proper, but never manipulative or underhanded like some in-laws could be. If she wanted to meet, she likely had a specific purpose in mind. After brief consideration, Samantha replied, Hello Patricia, it was nice to hear from you. I'd be happy to meet for coffee. How about Tuesday at 2 p.m. at Sawada on Ohio Street? The response came quickly, Tuesday at 2 works perfectly. Looking forward to seeing you, Patricia. With that settled, Samantha turned her attention to work materials spread across her dining table. The promotion to district curriculum director had been unexpected but welcome, offering both a significant salary increase and a chance to impact education on a broader scale. The transition from principal to administrator had been challenging but fulfilling, giving her a professional focus during the months when her personal life was in disarray. As she prepared for bed, Samantha caught her reflection in the bathroom mirror. At 37, she looked different than she had a year ago, not older, exactly, but more defined. The uncertainty that had shadowed her eyes during the final months of her marriage was gone, replaced by a quiet confidence. She'd survived the worst and emerged stronger, more self-assured. Dating hadn't been a priority in the months following her divorce. Between the move, the promotion, and simply processing everything that had happened, Samantha hadn't felt ready to open herself to new romantic possibilities. There had been gentle nudges from friends, offers to set her up, suggestions about dating apps, comments about eligible colleagues, but she'd politely declined, preferring to rediscover herself as an individual before considering coupledom again. Lately, though, she'd found herself more open to the idea. The crushing betrayal of Daniel's affairs had left its mark, but it hadn't destroyed her capacity for trust, just made her more discerning about where she placed it. Last week, she'd accepted a dinner invitation from Thomas Mitchell, the new head of the English department at her former school. It wasn't exactly a date, more of a professional collegial meeting, but it represented a willingness to engage that had been absent in the immediate aftermath of her divorce. Tuesday arrived with unseasonably warm October weather, allowing Samantha to walk to the coffee shop from her office. She spotted Patricia immediately, elegant as ever in a camel-colored coat, silver hair swept into a neat chignon. "Samantha," Patricia rose to greet her, embracing her with genuine warmth. "You look wonderful." "So do you," Samantha replied, meaning it. Despite being in her mid-60s, Patricia had the vibrant energy of someone decades younger. After ordering a matcha latte for Patricia, an Americano for Samantha, they settled at a corner table. There was an initial awkwardness, the weight of everything unspoken hanging between them. "I've missed you," Patricia said finally. "I've wanted to reach out for months, but I wasn't sure if it would be welcome." "I've missed you too," Samantha admitted. "You were always more than just my mother-in-law." Patricia smiled sadly. "That's kind of you to say, especially given the circumstances." She hesitated, then continued more firmly. "I want you to know that Robert and I were appalled by Daniel's behavior. Completely appalled. The way he treated you, the lies, the multiple." She trailed off, apparently unable to directly name her son's infidelities. "Thank you," Samantha said simply. "That means a lot. We raised him better than that," Patricia continued, a hint of bewilderment in her voice. "Or at least, we thought we did. I've spent months wondering where we went wrong, what we missed." "It's not your fault," Samantha assured her. "Daniel made his own choices." Patricia nodded, though she didn't look entirely convinced. "How are you, really? I've worried about you." "I'm good," Samantha replied, surprised to find it was the truth. "The divorce was difficult, obviously, but I'm in a better place now. New apartment, new position at work. Moving forward." "I'm glad to hear it." Patricia stirred her latte thoughtfully. "You deserved better than what happened." They chatted for a while about neutral topics: Samantha's promotion, Patricia's garden club activities, Robert's semi-retirement from his dental practice. It was almost possible to pretend this was a normal catch-up between friends, with no painful history shadowing the conversation. Finally, Patricia set down her cup decisively. "There's something specific I wanted to discuss with you, Samantha." "I suspected as much," Samantha acknowledged. "What is it?" "It's about Daniel." Patricia reached into her purse and withdrew an envelope. "He's in trouble. Serious trouble." Samantha felt her guard rise immediately. "If he sent you to—" "He doesn't know I'm here," Patricia interrupted. "I haven't spoken to him in nearly 2 months. Not since." She hesitated, then pushed the envelope across the table. "These arrived at our house, addressed to him. He still uses our address for some financial matters." Warily, Samantha opened the envelope to find what appeared to be legal documents, a summons and complaint naming Daniel as defendant in a civil suit brought by Westfield Enterprises. Westfield was one of his biggest clients, Patricia explained unnecessarily. "They're suing him personally, as well as the agency, for misappropriation of funds. There's also a criminal investigation pending, according to Robert's sources." Samantha scanned the documents, which detailed allegations matching what Adrian had described: fraudulent vendor payments, shell companies, systematic overbilling. The amounts involved were substantial, totaling over $300,000. "Why are you showing me this?" Samantha asked carefully. Patricia looked pained. Because you were involved in the settlement negotiations. You knew about this situation before it became public. I thought perhaps you might have information that could help. Samantha sat back, studying her former mother-in-law's face. Help who, exactly? Daniel? The agency? You? All of them, I suppose, Patricia admitted. The agency partners are claiming they had no knowledge of Daniel's activities. If that's true, they stand to lose everything because of his actions. And Daniel himself is facing potential criminal charges. I see. Samantha folded the documents and returned them to the envelope. I'm afraid I can't help you, Patricia. What I knew came from a confidential source, and it was limited in scope. I used it to negotiate my divorce settlement, nothing more. But you could testify about when you became aware of the situation, what Daniel told you. No, Samantha said firmly. I will not get involved in this. My divorce is final, my settlement is secure, and I've moved on with my life. Whatever consequences Daniel is facing for his actions are his problem, not mine. Patricia looked disappointed but not surprised. I understand. I had to try, for his sake. Despite everything, he's still my son. Of course he is, Samantha said more gently. And I respect your loyalty to him. But my loyalty to Daniel ended when he betrayed our marriage, multiple times, with multiple women. They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of everything that had transpired between their families hanging in the air. For what it's worth, Patricia said finally, I believe you did the right thing. At the brunch, with the video. It was shocking, certainly, but sometimes the truth needs to be shocking to be believed. Samantha hadn't expected that. Thank you. That couldn't have been easy to say. It wasn't, Patricia agreed with a small smile. But it's true nonetheless. You forced everyone, including us, his parents, to see who Daniel really was, not who we wanted him to be. As they parted ways outside the coffee shop, Patricia embraced Samantha once more. I hope this isn't goodbye forever. Despite everything with Daniel, I've always considered you family. I'd like to stay in touch, Samantha said, surprised to find she meant it. Coffee again sometime. Just, no more legal discussions. Agreed, Patricia nodded. And Samantha? I'm truly happy you're finding your way forward. You deserve every happiness. Walking back to her office, Samantha found her mind churning with this unexpected development. Daniel facing legal consequences for his financial misdeeds wasn't entirely surprising. Adrian's information had suggested the improprieties were significant, but the reality of it was more complicated than she'd anticipated. Part of her felt a grim satisfaction. Daniel had lied, cheated, and apparently stolen, and now he was facing the natural consequences of those actions. But another part recognized the wider impact. The agency partners who might lose their livelihoods, Patricia and Robert watching their son potentially face criminal charges, even agency employees like Adrian who had already lost jobs in the fallout. Her phone buzzed with a text from Katie, lunch tomorrow? I have gossip about a certain ex-brother-in-law that you might find interesting. Samantha texted back, already heard. His mother paid me a visit today. We'll fill you in tomorrow. Katie's response came immediately, she what? Now I'm dying of curiosity. Angelo's at noon? See you there, Samantha confirmed. That evening, as Samantha prepared a simple dinner in her new kitchen, her doorbell rang unexpectedly. Through the peephole, she was startled to see Daniel standing in the hallway. Her first instinct was to ignore it, to pretend she wasn't home. But that felt like reverting to old patterns of avoidance rather than directly confronting uncomfortable situations. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door but remained firmly in the doorway, blocking entrance. Daniel, she said coolly. What are you doing here? He looked terrible, unshaven, circles under his eyes, his typically impeccable appearance notably diminished. I need to talk to you, Sam, please. We have nothing to discuss. Everything is handled through the attorneys. The divorce is final. There are no more attorneys, he pointed out. This is about something else. Something important. Samantha hesitated, torn between curiosity and self-protection. Whatever it is, we can discuss it here. Daniel glanced down the hallway. It's sensitive. Could I please come in? Just for 5 minutes. Against her better judgment, Samantha stepped aside, allowing him to enter but leading him only as far as the small entryway. 5 minutes, she confirmed, arms crossed. Daniel took in her apartment with a quick glance. Nice place, he commented. You didn't come here to discuss my decorating choices, Samantha reminded him. What do you want, Daniel? He sighed heavily. I'm in trouble, Sam. So I've heard. Westfield is suing you for fraud. There's a criminal investigation pending. Daniel's eyebrows shot up. How do you, never mind. My mother. He ran a hand through his disheveled hair. Yes, that's the situation. It's bad, Sam. Really bad. And this concerns me how, exactly? Samantha asked. The attorneys are asking how the information about the vendor payments came to light. They know someone tipped off Westfield, and they're trying to trace the source. He looked at her directly. They're asking if it was you. Me? Samantha gave a short, disbelieving laugh. Why would I have reported you to Westfield? I used the information to negotiate our divorce settlement, nothing more. That's what I told them, Daniel said quickly. But they're looking for someone to blame, someone besides me. The agency partners are claiming total ignorance, trying to save their own skins. Again, what does this have to do with me? Daniel shifted uncomfortably. I need to know what Adrian told you, exactly. What evidence she provided. She's disappeared, quit without notice, phone disconnected, apartment emptied. The attorneys can't locate her to depose her. And you think I know where she is? Samantha asked incredulously. No, but I think you might have information that could help my defense. Records, documents, something to prove the partners knew about the billing practices. He took a step toward her. Sam, I could go to prison. The realization hit Samantha like a physical blow. You want me to help you avoid consequences for actions you actually committed? Actions you've apparently just admitted to in my living room? It wasn't just me, Daniel insisted. The partners knew. Maybe not the details, but they knew we were padding invoices, creating markups. It's standard practice in the industry. No, Daniel, fraud is not standard practice in any legitimate industry. Samantha shook her head in disbelief. You stole from your clients, lied to your partners, and now you want me, the wife you cheated on repeatedly, to help you escape accountability? Not escape, he corrected hastily. Just ensure the blame is properly distributed. The agency's legal team is positioning me as a rogue employee who acted alone. They're setting me up to take the full fall. Samantha felt a surge of anger unlike anything she'd experienced during their divorce. This audacity, this entitlement, this assumption that she would help him despite everything, was somehow more infuriating than the infidelity had been. Get out, she said quietly. Sam, please. Get out, she repeated, louder this time. Your 5 minutes are up, and you've used them to confirm exactly why our marriage ended. You care about no one but yourself, Daniel. Not your clients, not your partners, certainly not me or our marriage vows. That's not fair, he protested. I made mistakes, terrible ones, but… Mistakes? Samantha cut him off. Multiple affairs aren't mistakes. Systematic embezzlement isn't a mistake. These are choices, Daniel. Deliberate, calculated choices that you made repeatedly, knowing they were wrong. Daniel's expression hardened. So that's it? You won't help me? After 8 years of marriage? 8 years during which you were apparently living a double life, Samantha reminded him. I owe you nothing. You'll regret this, Daniel said, his tone turning cold. When this goes to trial, everything will come out, including what you knew and when. You think your hands are clean in this? You used information about potential financial crimes to benefit yourself in our divorce rather than reporting it. Samantha felt a chill at the implied threat. Are you threatening me, Daniel? Because that seems unwise, given your current legal situation. They stared at each other for a long moment, the wreckage of their marriage and the new reality of adversaries hanging in the air between them. I should never have come here, Daniel said finally. I thought there might still be some part of you that cared what happens to me. That part died the night I heard you planning rendezvous with your mistress in our bedroom, Samantha replied evenly. Now please leave and don't come back. After the door closed behind him, Samantha leaned against it, heart racing. The encounter had left her shaken, not from fear but from the stark reminder of who Daniel truly was, manipulative, self-serving, willing to use anyone, including her, to protect himself. After Daniel's desperate visit, Samantha took practical steps to protect herself. She called Eliza first thing the next morning, explaining his implied threat to drag her into his legal troubles. It's mostly bluster, the attorney assured her. You had no fiduciary duty to report potential financial crimes that you learned about through a third party. His attorneys would know this is a dead end. Still, should I be prepared for some kind of legal action? Samantha pressed. A subpoena, a deposition request? It's possible but unlikely. If it happens, we'll handle it. The most they could establish is that you had second-hand knowledge of potential improprieties, which you used as leverage in divorce negotiations, something that happens in high-conflict divorces every day. Somewhat reassured, Samantha focused on work, grateful for professional challenges that provided respite from her personal drama. The curriculum planning meetings that occupied most of her day were a welcome distraction. Lunch with Katie at Angelo's provided a chance to process the previous day's events more fully. I can't believe he showed up at your apartment, Katie fumed over pasta. The absolute audacity. He cheats on you, gaslights you for months, and then expects you to help him avoid consequences for crimes he actually committed? That's Daniel, Samantha said, sipping her iced tea. Always the victim of circumstances rather than the architect of his own downfall. Do you think he was serious about dragging you into the legal proceedings? Samantha considered this. I'm not sure. It sounded like a desperate threat, but desperation makes people unpredictable. So who do you think tipped off Westfield? Katie asked. If it wasn't you or Adrian? Could have been anyone with access to the financial records, Samantha mused. A bookkeeper, an account executive, maybe even one of the partners trying to distance themselves. Or karma finally catching up with him, Katie suggested. Cosmic justice for being a cheating dirtbag. Later that evening, Samantha's phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. It's Adrian. I heard Daniel might be looking for me. Just wanted you to know I'm fine, got a job in Seattle, fresh start. Hope you're doing well too. Samantha stared at the message, surprised by the unexpected contact. After brief consideration, she replied, glad to hear you're okay. Yes, Daniel came by looking for help with his legal situation. I declined. Good luck in Seattle. Adrian's response came quickly, thanks. For what it's worth, I did the right thing before leaving. Westfield deserved to know the truth. So there it was, confirmation that Adrian had been the whistleblower. Samantha wasn't entirely surprised. It aligned with the woman's apparent desire to make amends after her role in the affair. Take care of yourself, Samantha texted back, not entirely sure why she felt compelled to respond at all. The weeks that followed brought a strange equilibrium. Daniel made no further contact, though Samantha occasionally heard updates through mutual friends or Katie, whose new position in the marketing world kept her in the industry gossip loop. The civil lawsuit from Westfield was proceeding, with preliminary hearings scheduled for after the new year. The criminal investigation remained ongoing, with no formal charges filed yet. Samantha focused on rebuilding her life, piece by piece. Her apartment became more personalized with each passing week, artwork hung, books arranged, plants thriving in the abundant natural light. Her professional reputation in the district grew as her curriculum initiatives gained traction. Even her social life expanded beyond family and close friends, with occasional happy hours and networking events filling her calendar. In November, 3 months after her casual professional dinner with Thomas Mitchell, Samantha found herself on what was unmistakably a third date with him. They'd moved from collegial conversations about education policy to more personal discussions about books, travel, and family. Thomas was divorced as well, amicably, 5 years earlier, and seemed to understand the careful pace Samantha needed. I'd like to cook for you next Friday, he suggested as they walked along the lakefront after dinner. Nothing fancy, but I make a decent risotto. Samantha hesitated briefly. Dinner at his home represented a shift in their developing relationship, a step she wasn't entirely sure she was ready for. I hear hesitation, Thomas said gently. No pressure, Samantha. We can stick to restaurants as long as you want. His perception and respect for her boundaries made the decision easier. No, I'd like that, she replied with a genuine smile. Friday works for me. Should I bring wine? Perfect. Red would be great with what I have planned. As they continued walking, Thomas carefully took her hand. When she didn't pull away, his fingers interlaced with hers, the simple contact warming her against the November chill. For the first time since her marriage imploded, Samantha felt the quiet possibility of something new unfolding, something based on mutual respect rather than deception. The week passed quickly, filled with budget meetings and teacher evaluations. By Friday evening, as Samantha selected a bottle of Cabernet from her small collection, anticipation had largely overcome apprehension. Thomas had proven thoughtful and transparent over their previous dates, never pushing for more than she was ready to give. His condo in Wicker Park was warm and inviting, bookshelves lining one wall of the living room, a collection of framed jazz concert posters, comfortable furniture that spoke of a life lived rather than an image cultivated. The promised risotto bubbled on the stove as he greeted her with a brief hug. I hope you like mushroom, he said, taking the wine. I should have asked about dietary restrictions. Mushroom is perfect, she assured him. Can I help with anything? Just keep me company while I finish up here. He gestured to a stool at the kitchen island. Tell me about your week. Dinner was delicious, the conversation easy. Thomas talked about his teenage daughter, who lived primarily with her mother in Michigan but visited monthly. Samantha shared stories from her early teaching days, when classroom management had been more aspiration than reality. I have to ask, Thomas said as they moved to the couch with the remainder of the wine. And please feel free not to answer. But I've heard rumors about how your marriage ended. Something about a dramatic family revelation? Samantha tensed slightly. She'd become accustomed to sidestepping this question from colleagues and acquaintances, offering vague references to irreconcilable differences rather than the full, painful story. But Thomas had been honest about his own past, and something in his attentive silence made her want to reciprocate. The rumors are probably true, she admitted. My ex-husband was having multiple affairs. I confirmed it by hiding a camera in our bedroom after months of gaslighting. Then I played the footage during a family brunch when he insisted I was overreacting to his suspicious behavior. Thomas's eyebrows rose. That's quite a statement. It wasn't my proudest moment, Samantha acknowledged. But after months of being made to feel crazy for having legitimate suspicions, I needed everyone to see the truth. I understand completely, Thomas said. My ex-wife didn't cheat, but she did hide a gambling problem that nearly bankrupted us. When I finally confronted her with bank statements, she told our friends and family I was financially controlling. The shared experience of betrayal, though different in specifics, created a moment of connection between them. For the first time, Samantha felt she was with someone who truly understood how it felt to have reality twisted by a spouse's deceptions. As the evening concluded, Thomas walked her to the door. The moment held possibility. A first kiss seemed both appropriate and desired. Yet when he leaned slightly toward her, Samantha felt a flicker of panic rise unexpectedly. I had a wonderful time, she said, taking a small step back. Thank you for dinner. If Thomas was disappointed, he hid it well. I'm glad. We should do it again soon. I'd like that, she replied honestly. I just need time, he finished for her with an understanding smile. I'm not going anywhere, Samantha. We can take this as slowly as you need. His patience was yet another confirmation that Thomas was nothing like Daniel. Where her ex-husband had always pushed for what he wanted, Thomas respected her boundaries without resentment. In the Uber home, Samantha reflected on her instinctive retreat from physical intimacy. The evening had been perfect in many ways: good food, engaging conversation, genuine connection. Yet when the moment for greater closeness arrived, old wounds had resurfaced. Despite her progress in other areas, trust remained a fragile, tentative thing where romantic relationships were concerned. December arrived with a flurry of holiday preparations and end-of-semester activities. Samantha decorated her apartment modestly: a small pre-lit tree, a few cherished ornaments she'd claimed in the divorce, a poinsettia on the dining table. Christmas would be spent at her parents' home, with Katie and Mike and their respective partners creating the chaotic family gathering that had always been their tradition. A week before the holiday, as Samantha was wrapping gifts at her dining table, her phone rang with an unfamiliar number. Hello? Ms. Walsh? This is Detective James Romano with the Financial Crimes Division. I'm calling about the Daniel Miller investigation. Samantha's heart skipped. Yes? We'd like to ask you some questions about what you might have known regarding Mr. Miller's financial activities at his agency. Would you be available to come to the station tomorrow? So Daniel's threat hadn't been entirely empty. The authorities were indeed interested in her knowledge of the situation. I'll need to check my schedule, she said carefully. And I'd like my attorney present. Of course, the detective replied smoothly. This is just a preliminary conversation, not a formal statement. We're speaking with anyone who might have relevant information. After getting the details, Samantha immediately called Eliza, who agreed to accompany her to the meeting the following morning. Remember, you're not under investigation, Eliza reminded her as they walked into the police station. You're providing potential information as a witness. Answer truthfully but don't volunteer anything beyond what's asked. Detective Romano was a middle-aged man with shrewd eyes and a deceptively casual demeanor. After introductions and preliminaries, he got directly to the point. Ms. Walsh, when did you first become aware of potential financial improprieties at Miller Marketing Agency? Samantha glanced at Eliza, who nodded slightly. During my divorce proceedings, approximately 9 months ago, I received information from a third party suggesting that my then-husband might have been involved in questionable billing practices. And this third party was? Adrian Carlisle, who worked at the agency. Did you report this information to anyone? The agency partners, the clients involved, law enforcement? No, Samantha replied honestly. I used the information solely for leverage in my divorce settlement negotiations. My knowledge was secondhand and unverified. The detective made notes before continuing. Did Mr. Miller ever directly confirm these activities to you? Samantha hesitated, thinking of Daniel's desperate visit to her apartment. Eliza interjected smoothly, my client would like clarification on the timeframe you're asking about. During the marriage, during divorce proceedings, or after the divorce was finalized? Let's start with during the marriage, Romano specified. No, Samantha answered firmly. During our marriage, Daniel never discussed any financial improprieties with me. I had no knowledge of his business practices beyond what any spouse might casually observe. And during the divorce proceedings? He never explicitly confirmed anything. He agreed to settlement terms that took the allegations into account, but without directly addressing their validity. I see. Romano made another note. And after the divorce? Here Samantha paused again, looking to Eliza, who nodded encouragingly. After the divorce was finalized, Daniel came to my apartment once. He was facing the Westfield lawsuit and criminal investigation. During that conversation, he implied that the financial practices in question were standard in the industry and that the agency partners were aware of them, even if they didn't know specific details. So he essentially admitted to the fraudulent practices while attempting to distribute blame? That was my interpretation, yes. The interview continued for another 30 minutes, with Romano asking detailed questions about what specific information Adrian had provided, what documentation Samantha had seen, and whether she had retained copies of anything relevant. Throughout, Eliza carefully monitored the questioning, occasionally advising Samantha on how to frame her responses. Thank you for your cooperation, Ms. Walsh, Romano said as the interview concluded. If we need any additional information, we'll be in touch. Outside the station, Samantha exhaled deeply. How do you think that went? Very well, Eliza assured her. You were honest but measured, and nothing you said incriminates you in any way. It's clear you were peripheral to the financial matters, with only second-hand knowledge obtained post-separation. Will I need to testify if there's a trial? Possibly, but not as a central witness. Your testimony would primarily establish timeline and context, not substantive evidence of the fraud itself. The meeting with Detective Romano added a new layer of complication to Samantha's holiday season. Though Eliza had reassured her that her legal position remained secure, the interview had reopened wounds that had begun to heal. Discussing Daniel, revisiting the painful dissolution of their marriage, acknowledging his apparent criminal behavior, all of it left Samantha feeling unsettled just as she'd been finding her equilibrium. On Christmas Eve, as the Walsh family gathered for their traditional dinner, Samantha found herself distracted, her thoughts drifting repeatedly to the investigation and what it might mean for her continued efforts to move forward. You're a million miles away, Katie observed, joining her sister in the kitchen where Samantha was ostensibly helping with dessert preparations. Still thinking about the police interview? Among other things, Samantha admitted, mechanically slicing pie. I thought I was done with Daniel's drama. Now I'm being pulled back into his mess again. Because he's trying to drag you down with him, Katie said bluntly. Classic narcissist move. If he's going down, he wants to make sure everyone around him suffers too. I know. But knowing doesn't make it easier to deal with. Katie took the knife from her sister's hand, setting it aside to pull her into a hug. Listen to me. You survived the worst already. You found out your husband was cheating, confronted him publicly, went through a divorce, and built a new life for yourself. This is just one more aftershock, not a new earthquake. The metaphor, though simple, resonated with Samantha. You're right. I need perspective. Exactly. Now come join the family and stop hiding in here. Mike's new girlfriend is trying way too hard to impress Mom, and it's absolutely hilarious. The remainder of the evening was easier, filled with family traditions that predated her marriage to Daniel, silly board games, hot chocolate with candy cane stirs, the exchange of one gift each before the main event tomorrow morning. By the time Samantha returned to her apartment late that night, she felt more centered, more able to compartmentalize the investigation as separate from her new life. The new year arrived with a flurry of activity. The school district resumed session. Thomas invited her to a New Year's Day brunch that went wonderfully well, and Samantha finally felt ready for that first kiss when he walked her to her car afterward, a sweet, unhurried moment that left her smiling for hours afterward. In mid-January, as Chicago settled into the deep freeze of winter, Samantha received another call from Detective Romano. Ms. Walsh, I wanted to update you on the Miller investigation. We filed formal charges against your ex-husband for wire fraud, mail fraud, and money laundering. The district attorney's office will be proceeding with the case. I see, Samantha said, unsure how else to respond. Will I need to testify? Unlikely at this stage. We've secured cooperation from several key witnesses, including Adrian Carlisle, who has returned from Seattle to provide testimony. The documentation is quite comprehensive, and Ms. Carlyle's direct involvement makes her testimony more central to the case than yours would be. After hanging up, Samantha sat at her desk, processing the news. Daniel would be facing criminal charges, potentially prison time if convicted. The man she had once loved, built a life with, planned a future with, had fallen this far. Despite everything he'd done to her, there was a certain sadness in witnessing such a complete self-destruction. She called Thomas, who had become a steady, supportive presence in her life over the past 2 months. "They're charging Daniel," she said when he answered. "Formally, I mean. With multiple federal crimes." "How are you feeling about that?" he asked, his tone free of judgment. "Complicated," she admitted. "Relieved that I probably won't need to testify. Sad that it came to this. A little guilty for not feeling worse about it. All completely normal reactions," he assured her. "Want me to come over later? We could get takeout, talk it through if you want, or just watch a movie if you don't." His offer, practical, supportive, without pressure, was exactly what she needed. "That would be nice. Around 7? See you then." That evening, as they sat on her couch with containers of Thai food, Samantha found herself reflecting on the stark differences between Thomas and Daniel. Where Daniel had been charming but ultimately self-centered, Thomas was genuinely attentive. Where Daniel had made her doubt her own perceptions, Thomas validated her feelings without judgment. Where Daniel had seen her primarily as an accessory to his life, Thomas seemed genuinely interested in her as a complete person. "Penny for your thoughts," Thomas said, noticing her contemplative expression. "Just thinking about how different relationships can be," she replied honestly. "How the right person makes you feel secure instead of constantly questioning yourself." He set down his food, turning slightly to face her more directly. "Samantha, I hope you know that's what I want for you. Security, certainty, trust. I understand those things take time to build after what you've been through." "I'm getting there," she said, reaching for his hand. "Faster than I expected, honestly. Being with you is easy. In the best way." "I feel the same," he said, smiling. "No games, no drama, just 2 adults who enjoy each other's company and are figuring things out together." Later, after Thomas had gone home with plans to see her again on Saturday, Samantha found herself reflecting on how far she'd come in the past year. From the desperate woman who'd hidden a camera among her books to catch her husband in a lie, to someone building a new relationship based on honesty and mutual respect. The final chapter of her marriage to Daniel was still playing out in the legal system, but it no longer defined her daily life. She had reclaimed her narrative, re-established her boundaries, and rediscovered her ability to trust her own judgment. 2 weeks later, Samantha's phone rang with Patricia Miller's number, a contact she hadn't heard from since their coffee meeting months earlier. "Samantha," Patricia's voice was strained. "I'm sorry to bother you, but I thought you should know. Daniel has accepted a plea deal." "A plea deal?" Samantha repeated, surprised. "For the criminal charges?" "Yes. He'll plead guilty to reduced charges in exchange for his cooperation in the investigation of others involved." Patricia sounded exhausted. "He'll still serve time, 18 months in a minimum security facility, but it's better than the potential 10 years he was facing." "I see," Samantha said, processing this development. "How are you and Robert handling this?" "One day at a time," Patricia replied with the weary dignity Samantha had always admired in her. "It's not the life we imagined for our son, but we'll support him through it. He made terrible choices and now he's facing consequences." "I'm sorry you and Robert are caught in this," Samantha said sincerely. "You don't deserve the collateral damage from Daniel's actions." "No one does," Patricia agreed. "Not us, not the agency partners who trusted him, and certainly not you, Samantha. You least of all." After the call ended, Samantha sat in her living room, absorbing the news. Daniel in prison. It seemed surreal, yet also an inevitable conclusion to the path he'd chosen. She felt no joy in his downfall, no vindictive satisfaction that he was getting what he deserved. Only a quiet acknowledgement that actions have consequences, and Daniel's had finally caught up with him. She texted Thomas, sharing the news and accepting his invitation to dinner that evening. As she prepared for their date, Samantha realized that Daniel's legal fate affected her far less than it would have even 3 months ago. She had moved on, not just in the platitudes people offered after breakups, but genuinely, substantively moved forward into a life that was authentically hers. The hidden camera that had started this journey had long since been put away, a reminder of a desperate time when she'd needed concrete evidence to validate what she already knew in her heart. Now, Samantha trusted herself to recognize truth from lies, reality from gaslighting, authentic connection from manipulation. She was no longer the woman who needed video proof to confront her husband's betrayal. She was someone stronger, wiser, more confident in her own perceptions. Someone who had faced the painful truth and used it not just to end a destructive relationship, but to build something better in its place. As spring arrived in Chicago, bringing new growth after the long winter, Samantha's life continued its positive trajectory. Her relationship with Thomas deepened into something meaningful and nurturing. Her career thrived as her curriculum initiatives showed promising results. Her apartment became truly home, reflecting her personality and priorities without compromise. The echoes of her marriage to Daniel, legal proceedings, occasional updates through mutual connections, the rare moments of unexpected grief for what had been lost, grew fainter with time. Not forgotten, but integrated into her story rather than defining it. One evening in April, as she and Thomas walked along the lakefront after dinner, he asked a question that caught her off guard. "Do you ever regret it? Showing the video at the family brunch instead of confronting Daniel privately?" Samantha considered this thoughtfully. "Sometimes I question whether it was the most mature approach," she admitted. "But I don't regret it. After months of being told I was overreacting, of having my reality questioned and my intuition dismissed, I needed that public vindication. I needed everyone to see that I wasn't crazy, wasn't paranoid, wasn't making things up as Daniel had claimed." Thomas nodded. "That makes sense. Sometimes the dramatic approach is the only one that cuts through persistent gaslighting." Exactly. It wasn't about humiliating Daniel, though I'm sure it felt that way to him. It was about reclaiming my own reality, forcing acknowledgement of the truth I'd been told repeatedly didn't exist. As they continued walking, hand in hand under the emerging spring stars, Samantha felt profound gratitude for where her journey had led her. The path had been painful, filled with betrayal and disillusionment, but it had ultimately brought her here, to a life built on authenticity rather than deception, to relationships based on mutual respect rather than manipulation, to a self-knowledge that no one could shake. She had trusted her instincts when everyone, especially Daniel, told her she was overreacting. She had sought evidence when platitudes weren't enough. And when that evidence confirmed her worst fears, she had found the courage to confront the truth publicly, refusing to be silenced or shamed. That courage had carried her through the darkest days of her divorce and continued to strengthen her as she built her new life, one honest moment at a time.